Hi, I'm Lizzie and thanks for watching. Today we are going to learn how to decorate a Christmas cake. Christmas is one of my all-time favourite times of the year, so I'm very excited. If you enjoy this video, please do just like and subscribe, and you should just click a link that might come up in the corner hopefully. So we'll get cracking with our Christmas cake now. So I have made, this is a 7-inch square Christmas cake. I made it about 3 weeks ago and I have turned it upside down so the flattest side is at the top, and then it makes it easiest to ice. I've also been feeding it with brandy so it's nice and moist. So for this Christmas cake you're going to need some marmalade. I like to use the Shredless fine cut version so I don't get lumps of the rind when I'm painting it on. You're going to need some white sugar paste or fondant, roller icing some people call it, some marzipan, and then you're going to need some red modelling paste, and you're also going to need a rolling pin, some icing sugar, and then for the end we're also going to use a star cutter and a couple of these little pearl balls. So the first thing I'm going to do with my fruitcake is I'm going to paint it with my marmalade. You want to put, this is so that your marzipan will stick to it, and you want to put quite a good layer on. I've got my fruitcake here on what some people call a lazy Susan, it's like a flat turntable, and normally you have like little dishes that sit on it and you fill with condiments, but I actually find it's really helpful for cake decorating because it's lower. So if I don't want to have my turntable, which is quite high, then I can just use this. So I've got my fruitcake now all covered in my marmalade, and I've got my marzipan out. Now I have already given my marzipan a knead because I want it to be nice and pliable and soft. So I'll just give it a little re-knead before I roll it out. So I've got my marzipan here. Just going to flatten that. A little bit of icing sugar underneath and on top. And then I'm going to start to roll, and you want to think while you're rolling, okay, I've got to cover the top and all of the sides. So every so often you can hold your cake over the top and see if you're nearly there or not. So you give a little roll and then turn 45 degrees. And you're just going to turn 45 degrees every time you turn. And if you think the marzipan is becoming a bit stuck, just add a little bit more icing sugar underneath. Okay, so I've got my marzipan now to the right size and the thickness that I would like it to be. I've held my cake over it to check I've got plenty of marzipan to go over and down the sides, and I'm going to get ready to flip my marzipan over. So I'm going to pull my marzipan over one side of my rolling pin, place my cake in front of me. Now you can do this from the back or you can do it from the front coming backwards. I prefer to do it this way around, and I'm just going to make sure got enough that's going to cover that side. I'm going to place it on top and I'm just going to roll it over. And now to do my corners, I'm not going to pull down, I'm going to pull away like so. And I'm going to go to the next corner and do the same. Marzipan is actually really pliable, and so it's much easier to work with than sugar paste fondant icing. And so it's actually really nice to have your base of your cake covered in marzipan, because that way you get a really nice clean base, so when you put your sugar paste on it's easier to smooth it all over. Okay, and then you're going to go all the way around like so. Okay, so obviously I've got a lot of excess, so I'm just going to get a knife and I'm just going to cut. First of all, I'm just going to rough cut around to get off the main chunk of the excess. And then check the cake is in the position where you want it to be on your board, and then you can cut a little bit closer. Try and keep your knife flush to the cake. If your knife goes at an angle inwards, so will your marzipan. So try and keep it nice and straight, so you get a nice clean and flush finish on your cake there. Same on each side. And now I've got my marzipan layer there. So it's worth now having a good wipe down of your table, because the marzipan will leave like a bit of a sticky layer, and you want your table to be completely clean before you start your sugar paste. So I've had a bit of a clean down now. My surface is nice and clean and dry, and my cake is just sitting there ready for its sugar paste. So I've got, it's probably about 2.5 pounds worth of white sugar paste here that I have already kneaded, but I'm just going to give another knead so it's ready for rolling. And I'm going to do this exactly the same way I did my marzipan. Keep looking at your cake, checking you've got enough. Hold the cake over the top once you've rolled it out to check it's going to cover it, and then it'll be ready to go on it. Okay, so I've got my icing rolled out now to a shape and size that I know will easily cover my cake. And I'm just going to very quickly just cover what I can of this icing with a little bit of cling film whilst I get a paintbrush and a little bit of water. Now, I don't want my cake to be soaking, but I just want it to be tacky so that the icing has got something to grip to. And then I'm gonna place my place my icing exactly the same way I did my marzipan over the top of the cake. So place my rolling pin in the middle, flip my icing over, place my cake in front, and I like to do the back to the front, so I'm gonna lie it on there, gently ease it over, and then place it down. Now, because that's going to hang right over there, I'm just going to put that on there to make sure it's not going to rip off. So I'll start with this corner here, exactly the same way you did your marzipan, all the way down. And to be honest, a square cake is really satisfying to do because this technique is just quite nice and it gives you a nice corner. And just remember, when you're doing this, you're not pulling down on the icing, you're pulling out. Okay, that is looking pretty good. I can't see any air bubbles in it. It's all looking nice and neat. So I'm just going to first of all roughly cut off my sides before I go back and cut them neatly. So I'm going to cut off, remember keeping your knife flush all the way across. Check on the other side that you haven't got any bits of marzipan or fruitcake on there. All the way across again. You can always take more off, but you can't add it back on at this stage. It's much trickier too. So we've got our present here, and at the moment all we have is a white present. If you wanted to change the colour of your present base, you can do it any colour you like. It's another variation on this is I'm going to do a red bow on this, but what would look nice is if you did really dark blue icing and then it was like a night sky scene with a bow. So you could do gold stars and a black bow. You could splatter some disco dust on it to make it sparkly. But for today, we're going to keep it white and do a nice big red bow, like a traditional present. So I'm going to put my cake to the side there, making sure I'm happy with it. And then I'm going to get out my modelling paste. Now, modelling paste is actually quite tricky to work with. So you want to give it a really good knead before you start working with it, and then it makes it much more pliable. So I've got that nice and how I want it now. A little bit of icing sugar and then roll it out. I mean, if you want to, this can be done as a sausage and then rolled out, which in fact I think for doing the strips across will be better. Just knead it up together and then roll it into a sausage. You don't want too much icing sugar on your table at this point because that will dry out the modelling paste. Okay, so I've got it's a very rough sausage, but it's fine. And then turn it. And just roll it into a nice long, thin flat. Make sure it doesn't get too stuck to the table as you're doing this. So this end feels a bit thinner, so I'm just gonna thin this end out a little bit. So that I know is definitely long enough to cover. So I'm gonna cut 2 slices out of this. I'm gonna go right along the edge here. Now you can use a ruler for this if you want to be exactly straight, or you can do it freehand. So I'm now going to wet my cake just on the cross. I'm just going to make a cross with it. And I'm just going to carefully hold my icing. Start on one side and move across to the other. And once you're happy that it's reached the bottom, just cut it off. Now I don't think I'm going to have quite enough to do along that way, so what I will do actually is I will do it along one way to meet this side, and then I'll do a separate piece for the other side. So I'll just put a little bit of water on here, and I will place my icing just to meet that line there. I'm just going to trim where it meets that middle join, and trim on the bottom as well. So I've got my other half there. And I'll just roll out one piece through this last little line before we do our bow. Okay, so I have now put my other piece of modelling paste on this side, and I've got a bit more out of the packet, and I'm just going to knead this so it's nice and pliable, and then I'm going to roll it out again, and I'm going to make a nice big bow to go on the cake. So that is probably 2 to 3 millimeters thick, and out of this we're going to make our bow. So I'm going to cut along and make 2 long thin strips. I'm going to cut off either end. Now to make the bow, you want to get another board and have it ready by the side. Now I'm going to put a little bit of icing sugar on this board. Now I'm going to turn over my icing, because when I make it into the bow I want the nicest side to show. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just take the corners off each end. So remember, this is the reverse side, and I've just taken the corners off. Now I'm going to wet on one side, about that much. It's probably a bit too wet, so I'll just take a bit off there. There we go. Now I'm going to pull over. At this point, you need to have a handy little bit of bubble wrap ready. I'm going to pull over my bow, like so. I am going to take the center point and tweak it like that. Can you see that? And then I'm going to cut down. Now I'm going to let that set overnight. That is one side of my bow. I'm going to do exactly the same to the other side. So as well as my bow, I also want some ribbons that will come down from the bow. So I'm going to do exactly the same, roll out and cut two strips, the same width as your bow. Now these pieces, I'm going to do, you can do these as long or as short as you like. If you're someone who likes the bows on your ribbons to be like long and trailing, you can do them nice and long. Or if you're someone who likes them to be nice and short, you can do them short. Now I might want to add a little bit of movement in my ribbons. So again, I'm going to grab a little bit of bubble wrap. I'm just going to trim a little bit or two. And then I'm going to let these set. So I'm just going to move my bow up. You can either have them like that or do them like that. I'll show you that way. Now the top bit, I'm also going to take into just a slight point, because I'm going to tuck that bit under where my bow is. Roll up my bubble wrap and let that dry like that. So by tomorrow, when I come back to them, can you see how once I put my piece on the middle, what a nice bow that is going to be that I can place on top of my cake. So I have one bow that I made 24 hours ago. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to attach it to your cake, and you're going to add a center on. So I'm just going to decide which bit of your cake you want to be the front. I'm going to have that bit, I think that looks a bit thicker there as my front. And you can either do it with water, like I've just painted on a little bit of water into the centre, or you can with royal icing, if you feel safe with royal icing, put a little bit of royal icing on the back of this bow and then stick it on. So that's been drying for 24 hours and you can see now that's quite strong, and that is because I've used modelling paste and not sugar paste. So I can place one side of my bow on there and the other side of my bow on there. And now to join those two bits in the middle, I'm going to make a little sausage and pop it over the top. So I've got my little sausage there, and then you just want to make sure you can place it over the top of your bow. So I think I want mine a little bit thicker. I'm going to make it just a little bit thicker, just using my fingers. I mean, you can roll this out, cut it into a strip, but you can also just do it like this. And I'm going to start by putting my front side on there, on that side, and then just bringing it over. And just flattening it down so you create a nice centre. And with your paintbrush, just start to push that bit under. Okay, so I've got my bow how I want it, and now I'm going to add my ribbons on. And I actually think that these ribbons that I've done are going to be a little bit short for this bow, so I'll just show you. I want to pop them both in there, but you can see, you're still going to see that join. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take these ones off, and the ones that I've just made, these two here, I'm actually going to put on now, and I'm going to leave the bubble wrap underneath the hoop, the little hump bit, for a couple of hours, maybe 24 hours if I just leave it overnight, and then I'll just pull the bubble wrap out tomorrow and that will be absolutely fine. So I'll just pop a little bit of water on where our ribbons are going to go, and we'll place one coming out of one side. In fact, I might even just chop that a little bit there. Have one coming out of here, like so, and the other one, I'll just chop that bit off there as well, coming out of this side. And actually, by doing this now while it's a little bit more pliable, I can just mould them into the shape I want them to be on there. In about 24 hours, I will just pull out those little bits of bubble wrap and they will be set there. Now, something that I think will look really nice just to finish this off is a little bit of pearl. And if you remember, we've got our marzipan underneath, and that can act like another layer. So we can take out, we can use cutters any shape you like, and you can take out the layer of fondant and then fill it with sparkles. So I'm literally going to get my little star cutter, I'm going to push it down into my cake. So you can see I've pushed it right down there. Take it out. With my knife, I'm just going to ease out the bit of fondant. This has really stuck well. It doesn't really matter if this bit is a bit messy. There we go. Out it pops. So you can see I've just got the shape of a star there now. I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. And again, I'm just going to take my knife and just pull out the white section. I'm going to put a little bit of water on my marzipan, a bit much there, a little bit of water just to make it nice and tacky, and then I'm going to fill the 2 star holes with my pearls. Now the pearls might go everywhere at this point, I'm just going to give you a heads up, but I'm just going to carefully put them in. The important thing is just to fill them. You don't want to see the marzipan, you want all of your star to be nice and full. You can always pour them into the middle and then push them right out to the edge like this, or if you like to be very precise, you can start from the edge and work inwards with just a couple at a time. So I'm just going to take these out now so you can see what it will look like when I take them out. There we go. And there we have it. There is our easy Christmas cake. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please do like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.